Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we are doing a short beginner's guide to Yellow Turban reforms, geared toward those playing the Yellow Turban DLC for the very first time. In this guide, we'll introduce the new Yellow Turban reform scrolls, discuss how research rate works, and showcase some key reforms for you to focus on in your games. To start, we have the unique Yellow Turban reform scroll shown here. And it's clear from the get-go that there are 3 separate scrolls, each with 20 different reforms for a total of 60 new Yellow Turban reforms. The scroll on the top is the Book of the Heaven, the scroll in the middle is the Book of the People, and the scroll on the bottom is the Book of the Earth, and they correspond to the Scholar, Healer, and Veteran classes in the game. Vertically, the scrolls can also be subdivided into 5 different tiers as shown here. Tier 1 contains the 9 reforms that are available at the beginning of the game. Tier 2 contains 15 reforms that become unlocked once your faction reaches the rank of Balanced. Following that, Tier 3 has another 15 reforms that requires the rank of Healed, and Tier 4 has 18 reforms that requires the rank of Empowered. Finally, Tier 5 has just 3 reforms that becomes available once you reach the rank of Ascended, which is equivalent to the King rank in the base game. Unlike the base game, you will also no longer receive one free reform in every spring or every 5 turns. Instead, we now have a research rate mechanism that determines how long each reform will take to unlock. At the beginning of the game, the default research rate is set to 100% as shown by the top figure here, and at this rate, the Tier 1 reforms will take 4 turns to unlock, the Tier 2 or the Balanced reforms will take 6 turns, the Tier 3 or the Healed reforms will take 10 turns, and the Tier 4 or the Empower reform will take 15 turns, and finally the Tier 5 or the Ascended reforms will each take 20 turns. So with a little math, we can easily find out how much faster we can get new reforms if we increase our research rate just by dividing our research rate into these initial turn requirements. For example, at 200% research rate, these turns now becomes 2, 3, 5, 8, and 10. Now, you might think the Tier 4 or the Empower reform that requires 8 turns now, it's because 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, so we rounded up to 8. But in reality, even if that result had been 7.00001, it would still round up to 8, as 7 turns is not enough to unlock the reform, and you end up wasting some of your research rate on that final turn. Carrying this logic forward, at 400% research rate, our turns required now becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The critical thing here to note is that our Tier 1 reform has hit their lowest value, as you can have 1000% research rate, but Tier 1 reform will still require 1 turn. So once you hit 400% in your game, I recommend you to quickly grab all the Tier 1 reforms, as it will be the most efficient use of your research rate. Any higher research rate would result in some loss of research rate when you go for these Tier 1 reforms. Conversely, 500% research rate becomes another key level, as our Tier 3, 4, and 5 reforms all divide evenly into 5. So this is the best time to grab them, as the Tier 2 reforms can wait until you hit 600%, which will reduce them to just 1 turn. Another key difference from the base game is that none of the reforms here are linked to one another, as there are no lines of progressions on the reform scroll. This means there are no prerequisite and no build path for any of these reforms. So you can pick and choose your reform in any order from any of the scrolls and tier levels as long as you have reached the proper rank to unlock them. So there's a lot of freedom in terms of when to research certain reform, and you're not punished for making mistakes as there are no sunk costs here, unlike in the base game. So with that said, let's highlight some key reforms for you to focus on in your game. Starting with unit unlocking reforms, we have a total of 13 reforms unlocking 16 different units for the Yellow Turban faction. In each scroll, there are 4 reforms that will unlock 5 units each for the class that the scroll is associated with. So for the Heaven scroll on the top, all units unlocked will be exclusive to the Scholar class. And from the middle scroll or the People scroll, you will be exclusive to the Healer class, and the bottom scroll or the Earth scroll will be exclusive to the Veteran class. Now, the only exception to this rule is the martial arts practice reform in the People Scroll, which unlocks the Trebuchet unit for the veteran class. But since it's located in the Healer's Book of the People, it's a little bit confusing. Now, I have no clue why the game did this, as it only serves to add more confusion to the dual color system of the Yellow Turban generals. But moving on, we have another 13 reforms that deal with building unlocks for level 4 and level 5 upgrades for all building chains and county upgrades. I will not be going into much detail about these, as there are no right order to unlock these. It totally depends on which commanders you control and which buildings you need in your game. The only thing you need to note is that you should always unlock the level 4 upgrade reforms in the tier 2 reforms before you go for the level 5 upgrade, or else you're simply wasting your time. Next, I just want to highlight the final reforms on each scroll. These reforms are expensive in terms of research time, but they play a critical role in unlocking leadership positions in your court for each of your classes. So once your research rate hits 400 or 500%, or a nice number that divides evenly into 20, definitely consider spending a few turns to unlock these. Next, we move on to reforms that provide battle-related bonuses. Now, there are only 9 such reforms, and the bonus that it provides ranges from replenishment to redeployment discount as shown here. In the early to mid game, I highly recommend you to focus on these 3 reforms that's highlighted in red. I often open up with a 10% post-battle loot reform, as the bonus will add up over the course of the entire game to tens of thousands of extra income. The campaign movement range bonus is obviously a great quality of life improvement that can also help you surprise attack on defended settlements or allow your defensive force to cover more ground to defend a much bigger area. In the mid-game, you will need to grab the redeployment discount as soon as possible, as that reform also unlocks the powerful Trebuchet unit. In the late game, you should turn your focus on upkeep reduction, as the small 10% discount stretched across multiple armies can be a substantial savings once you go for these high-tier, more expensive units. Lastly, as I tend to play in more range compositions for my armies, the 10% ammo bonus is always welcomed. Now that we hit up all the battle-related reforms, let's also take a look at all the character or general-related reforms, as Yellow Turbans can field a large roster of characters that all provide great bonuses once they gained a few levels and skills. On the reform scroll, all the character-related reforms are on the Heaven scroll, and there are 5 of them that provides a total of 20% experience, 17 satisfaction, and 50% discount to character salary. Now, the experience boost here is the best choice when deciding which ones to unlock first, as Yellow Turban characters possess some of the most overpowered skills in the game, as we have reviewed in our other Yellow Turban character guides. So getting them up to speed and leveling them up faster is going to be critical to your game. The satisfaction boost can be relevant in the early game when you don't have enough in-buildings to keep everyone happy, but by the mid-game, satisfaction should no longer be a concern for you. So with that said, we have covered units, buildings, leaders, battles, and character-related reforms for the Yellow Turban faction. We left out a few reforms that provides just income bonuses, but those are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to bore you with the details. Just remember, percentage income boosts are worthless until your base income is big enough, so save those for the late game. And this concludes our beginner's guide on Yellow Turban reforms. We have one final guide covering the Yellow Turban army composition coming out this weekend, so I hope to see you guys then. Bye!